Female Education, a Feminist Initiative and a Transformative Milestone Analysis. I have always known I was a feminist, even before I knew what the word was. I think others labeled me before I could label myself, but it never occurred to me to be an inappropriate title. Someone who believes in equality, I thought, and then questioned why people said the word with the same long and sharp F sound that begins so many unpleasant words. Standards for quality of life, education, and equal opportunity for men and women, boys and girls. People. I assumed it should go without saying that we all wanted these things, but then again, I have been wrong before. As I matured, so did my understanding of feminism. I learned about the first wave, the second wave, and finally the third wave, all formal constructs designed for and around feminism that sometimes help, but usually hinder the goal to break away from stereotypical and, of course, patriarchal norms. Personally, I can't keep them straight, and do not feel that I fit into either wave particularly well. I believe in quality of life, whatever that means for an individual, and believe that society has a certain amount of responsibility for supporting and creating space for that quality. However, due to the uniqueness of each human being, the word feminism and what it represents is completely different to each individual, culture, and community. In each case, the role of women is also different, and it is completely unfair, as so many old white feminists have, to try to stereotype and normalize the experiences of all women. Women and girls. Definition of the oppressed group. Personally, however, I like the word feminism. I like that it means equality no matter what gender. I like that it means equality no matter what class. And I love how it has come to mean equality no matter what race as well. This is what the word means for me. Thanks to some New Age theorists who are also becoming aware that race, class, and gender cannot necessarily be looked at through divided lenses. These definers, as well as many others, are interconnected and collectively formed to create unique and personal situations. More importantly, feminists are starting to incorporate aspects of anti-oppressive theories into their writings, and are beginning to realize that feminism relates to too many people to have easily definable goals that apply for each and every person under this umbrella. Instead, authors such as Bell Hooks encourage people to interpret their own versions of feminism as they see their needs and priorities. The equality I expect and fight for is not an equality I can expect anyone else to need or prioritize, and therefore I cannot speak for any other person. That having been said, people speak for themselves often, and in some ways which they do not realize promote views that Westerners would define as essentially feminist. Fronted by figureheads such as Emma Watson, Malala Yousafzai, and Beyoncé, feminism is now approached from many different angles, which makes it stronger and more diverse. Black feminism, for example, acknowledges that race is intertwined into much of the oppression Afro-American women face. Muslims who wear headdresses are educating others on how their choice to wear headscarves is not in fact a sign of their oppression, but rather a sign of their devotion. And young women all over the world and in every country who want equal access to education are speaking up to get it. Particularly, I want to focus this presentation on the work done by Malala Yousafzai, who did not until rather recently decide to align herself with the word feminism, a choice she was more than entitled to make. Determined that her pursuit of education would not be stopped for anything, Malala's efforts to make education accessible to all children is an ideal example of cross-border, cross-cultural, and cross-class feminism. According to her blog, Malala attended her father's school from an early age in northwest Pakistan. Her father was known for his advocacy and determination that children in his country be educated and believed that women were just as entitled to this education. According to Malala.org, Pakistan has the highest number of out-of-school children in the world. While growing up, Malala learned by example and was empowered through her father to learn and speak her mind. She began blogging on BBC website about her experiences as a female student in Pakistan, as well as her worries around the Taliban and the possible closing of her school. In 2011, Malala was awarded Pakistan's first National Youth Peace Prize. Malala, a young female, was empowered by her father to become educated, an opportunity many Pakistani girls do not have. In an article in Review of Literature by Nazreen Akhtar and Daniel Mitrao, they noted that many discrepancies and inequalities in the treatment and education of women and girls in Pakistan. They surmised that much of the mistreatment of women in Pakistan stems from misunderstandings and misinterpretations of the Quran and Islamic religion. Negative traditions around the treatment of women are often passed down through tribal customs rather than direct translation from the Quran, as it is known that deliberately keeping women in the tribes uneducated makes them easier to exploit and repress. In this way, the Pakistan Constitution, which does in fact state many of the United Nations universally declared human rights, is completely ignored. National leaders are often reluctant to challenge these norms, and the local leaders as they do not want political unrest. Although there is some international funding for children in Pakistan to go to school, it is not enough for all children and does not supply for all of their needs. In particular, it is especially difficult for girls who have to travel far from their homes to go to school, as they are susceptible to kidnappers and other forms of mistreatment during these long walks. In a report done by UNICEF on the education rates of out-of-school children in South Asian countries, distance from school as well as a few other barriers to attending and supplying education in Pakistan were noted. These included household wealth, urban-rural location, and gender. Pakistan, it has been noted, has the second highest rate of out-of-school children, and it is obvious in UNICEF's report that the intersectionality of these barriers are a large part in the struggle for children to get to school. The report compiled by UNICEF in 2014 discusses these barriers in a section titled The Pattern of Exclusion, which highlights how often the barriers experienced by children in Pakistan and other South Asian countries pile on top of each other to create an insurmountable wall to individuals. The watershed moment that sparked the initiative. In 2012, Malala was shot in the head. A Taliban officer had come onto her school bus, asked for her by name, and attempted to kill her. Although her wounds were severe, Malala was transferred to a hospital in the United Kingdom for her care and was joined there shortly after by her family. Her attack and recovery received worldwide attention around the unjust and severe treatment of children and women in Pakistan. Her story received media coverage in Canada and other Western countries, and now, living outside of Pakistan, she is able to continue the flow of the media and use it to her benefit. The key players and their contributions to the initiative. Specific to Malala's situation, there were three rather large contributors to her success at spreading the word of the need for educating all children, and especially for the importance of girls' education. Firstly, Malala's father is an enormous supporter of hers. He has given speeches and lectures on what it means for him to be the father of a girl who wants to be educated and wants to see others educated. He sounds proud of her when he talks about her accomplishments, and provided her with some of her first opportunities to go to school when she was younger. His support and concern is a combination not many girls in Pakistan have, and Malala has been able to accomplish a lot with him as her role model. Secondly, and I really hesitate to consider them a contributor to her success, is the Taliban. Although they are repressive and demented, oops, is that too strong of a word? It was their misfired gunshot that brought even more attention Malala's way and towards her plight. Through shooting a well-loved female icon, the Taliban created themselves into even more of an enemy in the eyes of Westerners and many others who support female education. Although in an ideal world they would not exist, in Malala's world they are seen as the enemy of education and a visual representation of the oppression faced by many Pakistani women and girls. They also unsuspectingly placed Malala in a greater position of power outside of Pakistan, where she is able to continue doing her work. Finally, Malala herself is a key player, of course, as she has the brains behind the operation. No pun intended. After her surgery and recovery, she has been able to continue her battle for the right to education and has been working through books, lectures, speeches, and media to raise awareness for the need for funding and support. She is widely recognized as a figurehead for female education and has done many interviews explaining her story and how it is similar to many others trying to obtain an education in Pakistan. She has come very far and continues to work very hard. The goals and the outcomes. Malala is quoted saying, "They can only shoot a body. They cannot shoot my dreams." The organization's most prominent role is very specific: to challenge the world to enable girls to complete 12 years of safe, quality education so that they can achieve their potential and be positive change makers in their families and communities. The Malala Fund wants to see girls' voices amplified, their local education and programs invested in, and for more educational resources and safe schools built for every child through advocacy. Malala is quoted many times saying, "One child, one teacher, one book, and one pen can change the world." Since Malala's recovery and reintroduction into her advocacy work, some of the outcomes of her initiative have begun to flower, and others are sprouting, ready to grow. On a macro level, Malala has increased international awareness about the need for children's education through her book, media attention, her film campaign, her continued activism, and the day that has actually been named in her honor, Malala Day. Her efforts have begun to push for what Akhtar and Mitral in 2013 say are the first steps towards modernizing Pakistan. Even more recently, Malala has been using her presence in the media to highlight the issues faced by Syrian refugees and has even funded a girls' school for girls living in the informal refugee camps. On a meso level, the Nobel Peace Prize won jointly by Malala and another children's rights activist from India has helped to increase tenuous community bonds between the two countries. In an article in The Guardian, it is stated that this was indeed a measured move on the part of the Nobel Prize awarders to mediate relations between the two communities, and stated that they hoped sharing similarities would assist in mending some of these relations. And finally, on a micro level, Malala has become an inspiration to many girls worldwide who want to advance their education and make a change in the world. Her efforts affect individual women globally and empower through role modeling. Theoretical reflection. As I stated in the beginning of the presentation, it is not always easy or relevant to label oneself as a feminist. However, Malala Yousafzai has openly identified herself as a feminist on at least one occasion and uses some feminist approaches to her work. One such approach is the idea that the personal is political. Malala recognizes that her experience is not separated from the experiences of other young girls have had while trying to access education. She recognizes that some of her struggles are shared and has even referred to other girls and women as her sisters in creating this change. However, at the same time, she does not promote women's education over top of men's education and holds value in all efforts to increase resources for children's education worldwide. Furthermore, Malala has embraced her own form of feminism, where she is often seen wearing headscarves and speaking of religious matters. She has not cast aside what she knows to be essentially feminine in exchange for being a feminist, even if this means that she is not necessarily what we would recognize in Western Canada as a feminist. As noted in the textbook for this class, minority women have shone a light on the limitations of Western feminism and have challenged these theories and practices to become more inclusive and more understanding. As Malala's project and aspirations grow and form, it is ideal that the fund and organization begin taking on some anti-oppressive approaches. Although the Malala Fund aims to connect resources to people who need them for education, there's a certain amount of power involved in holding that money. By being aware of anti-oppressive tactics to avoid perpetrating a hierarchical system, the Malala Fund has the ability to create a new system where students, teachers, and the funding organization are all equal. By breaking away from traditional school systems and creating more women and community-centered schools, the organization has the opportunity to rebuild individual and community relationships and structures from the ground up. What I love most about the first page of the Malala Organization website are all the empowering words that stand out right away. These would be words like enable, amplify, potential, invest, and advocate. All of these words suggest that although the organization is aware that they have the money to move resources, they also want to make sure that the resources received are the most appropriate for the targeted groups. By providing groups of girls with the opportunity to take control of their educations and make them personal, the organization is empowering rather than oppressing, and through this process also deconstructing traditional structures and expectations. Finally, time and time again, research comes out regarding women in education, and what it always shows is that an educated woman is better able to serve her community and her family, and in return, the community and family are more likely to be healthy. As I noted before, many of the women in Pakistan are not educated, and many more are not treated as equals within their society. Through education, many of these women could have had a feeling of empowerment within their societies versus feeling of disempowerment or oppression. The Malala Fund organization seeks to end this circle of disempowerment and instead provide the education to modernize and repair societies. Through education, Malala's work becomes emancipatory, and her goal to free women and children from the restraint, control, and power of those in their lives who do not wish to see them flourish becomes emancipatory work. Finally, the conclusion. The UNICEF report on education in South Asia and Pakistan noted that the efforts have been put in place to increase the provision of gender-friendly or girl-friendly schools within Pakistan and surrounding countries. In some cases, this has meant single-sex schools or schools closer to home so that household duties can be more easily accomplished. Delays in marriage have also helped, and although there is no evidence to support that increased education around child marriage, reproductive health, and child welfare have increased school attendance, there is other research that has determined that it can, in fact, increase the quality of life for women in their communities. To this day, Malala maintains that education is important and believes in the right for all children to go to school. She is an amazing person, a very strong person, and there are many more like her waiting for their opportunity to go to school and win their Nobel Prize. Although, when I first began identifying as a feminist, I in no way pictured myself standing beside someone like Malala, I now would consider myself more than honored and accomplished if I could touch half as many lives as she has. The change she brings is important and much needed, but it is going to require a lot of help, and I know I, for one, will be supporting her in the right for girls to have the access to the education they need, want, and most especially deserve. Thank you.